Welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy. This is Skeptic Generation, and we need to talk. Hey, everybody, I'm back. And V is having a restful morning and I'm taking the show today. So, hello. Happy to see you all. I know that it has been 2 weeks since I've been on, and I missed ya. Let's see. Before I dive into things, I kind of, some people like hearing what's going on and all of that. I recently got the bivalent booster for COVID on Friday, and it is whooping my butt. I have been really achy and just gross, but I'm happy to be getting that so that I'm not as at risk of, getting some serious COVID stuff if I wind up getting it in the future. So if you haven't and you're planning on seeing family for the holidays, I recommend that you get that done early. It just keeps things safer. Let's talk about our topic first. Oh, I'm looking at the discussion. Eric's back. Hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm back. Okay, so New Year's resolutions. V and I have been talking about it, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I want V to be here for that. But we talk about what we want to do, how we're going to make next year better. And not everybody follows through on them, and that's because we set expectations for ourselves that aren't always the best to be, aren't always easy and aren't always realistic. And so it kind of bites that we set ourselves up for failure, essentially, when we promise ourselves we're going to go to the gym every single day, and then by the end of February, you're exhausted. And so setting realistic goals for yourself and maybe tracking, your wellness. I think that's going to be the big goal for V and I this upcoming year, is tracking our wellness, not necessarily forcing ourselves to go to the gym every day, but just to take better care of watching our own well-being. And I'd love to go into that just a little bit more when V and I host together next. I think that's going to be next week. Okay, that said, we have got a lot of callers calling in. Normally there's more talk beforehand, but I'm really excited that we've got so many people that I'm so ready for this. So how about we just dive into our first call and go from there? I am doing this myself, so if it takes a little bit, just be patient with me. I've got to get everybody done. But our first caller today is Drew in Arizona. It says, is pathos the only useful rhetorical tool to persuade people? Drew, you're live.
Hey, Eric.
Hey.
Hope you feel better soon.
Me too, man. My bones hurt.
I can sympathize. I get the same kind of reaction with each booster. Yeah, it's rough.
What I'm really interested in is if anybody in the audience knows why when I am getting sick, my skin hurts, like anything touching my skin hurts. And it's hard to look up information about that isn't, WebMD being like, you're going to die, so you want to talk about pathos, and I kind of want to preface this that sometimes when we talk about ethos, pathos, logos, my brain for some reason says ego, id, and superego. And so I just want to make sure that I don't do that. So if you catch me slipping, just let me know. Sure. Oh, it looks like your name is all messed up in the lower third. Let me fix that really quick. Okay, so let me give you a bit of a breakdown, maybe also for people who are watching. Let's see if I get this right. So you have ethos, pathos, and logos. If you are appealing, right, this is Socrates, or no, not Socrates, Aristotle?
Yeah, Aristotle.
Okay. And you have, it's basically appeal to authority, appeal to emotion, and appeal to logic. Is that right?
Broadly, kind of just generic. Yeah, that's a good description.
Okay. And so it sounds like you're saying that you're kind of thinking that people are only really convinced emotionally, that they don't really consider authority or logic when it comes to being, is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, essentially, from my observations, kind of honestly, just anecdotally, the only kind of rhetorical arguments that have any normative force to them consistently seem to be like emotional appeals.
I agree to an extent. I mean, yeah, here's my like life example of that is debates. So I have really learned that when I'm debating someone, if I don't sound super confident, or if the person I'm debating, no matter how wrong they might be, if they sound super confident, they can sway the audience regardless of what comes out of their face hole. I had a debate with I've had really, really good debates where I felt really, really awful about it, but I sounded really confident and people were just like, Eric, you kicked ass. I'm like, no, I didn't. But most people were just like, yeah, no, that was great. And then the worst debate I ever did, it is so cringeworthy. It is deeply, deeply cringeworthy, Drew. It was early on, and it was against Tyler Vela. It was online, and he got under my skin. And even though it wasn't even about anything like big, it was really, really bad. He sounded really confident, and people were like, I feel like I got my butt handed to me, even though nothing that he said was super convincing. And so it definitely is important for us to recognize that even though we might want to live in a world where people are motivated by logic, that's not always the case, the way that you present it. And even Aristotle was just like, hey, you need a mix of the three, right? It's not just pathos. You need to have logic and authority to a degree to be able to convince somebody. So I don't know, man. My best the best version of the world to me is one where we do consider things logically. But too often I see other atheists, and especially, trying to behave like they're Spock, where, oh, no, emotion doesn't matter at all. In fact, if you show emotion, you lose. But that's just super unrealistic. I feel like it detaches us from the world. So I don't know. I'm happy to talk more about it, but I've been kind of talking at you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess in certain situations, like some sort of formal Oxford-style debate, it appeals to emotion are not a great thing. I guess I'm talking more like broad spectrum, dealing with like people, like in the real world. One example, I guess, is I'm a vegan. We don't have to get into that topic, but like consistently, like 10 out of 10 times when someone is actually willing to like kind of explore that topic with me, like at the end, we'll get to like some sort of resolution where like they'll agree with me, like, yeah, factory farming or treatment of animals, et cetera, is wrong. But also 10 out of 10 times you kind of see them just say, but I just can't stop eating meat. And like in real time, you can see the cognitive dissonance, like blooming in front of you. And you can kind of do that same thing with religion, like the topic of the Trinity doctrine, how that seems contradictory in nature or whatever. Like if you can get to a point where you can logically convince somebody, like pragmatically, like it never seems to make a difference. So I don't know, like it seems kind of a shame to me where I kind of pride myself in philosophical consistency and kind of being honest with my values. That I kind of seem forced to, like, if I genuinely want to like convince people of some sort of ethical argument or any argument really, that you kind of have to. I think it all boils down to like if the other person doesn't have any skin in the game, if they're not like emotionally affected kind of by the decisions that they're making, that it just kind of seems
like a waste.
Completely. Yeah. Like and so I don't know. I guess I just kind of looking for another opinion.
Well, so I don't even know if it's as much an opinion as it is just a kind of a frank, honest evaluation of what we're seeing. And
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I could just deliver opinions. And I feel like too many people online only deliver opinions. We should only be convinced by logic. But that does completely ignore the factual reality that we live in where people are convinced by emotion. And I've actually had those arguments, and I've seen it the other way around too, I've debated vegans and the like moving from the ethical to the like ethical veganism. Is it okay to kill another living thing? And then, getting upset and switching back to factory farming, which I agree is awful, and so you have that pathos as well. And so I'm there with you. And you know what? If we have other callers, but I'm almost tempted to go into a veganism debate with you today, just because that might be really, really fun. Although I do know that you probably didn't prep for that, so that would be really not nice to you. But let me see if there's anything else that I want to add to this whole, the pathos rhetoric.
Sure.
I feel like I dive back into the whole, like I said before, the id, super id, and ego, or sorry, id, ego, and super ego. There we go. Bleh. I feel like the best versions of ourselves are the ones where we think, hey, you know what? I should be convinced by it for good reason. And when we find ourselves emotionally attached to things, it can get really, really sticky. And so I feel like the best thing that we can do is, number one, keep an eye on it, right? It's really important that you're asking this question because you at least are aware that you can be biased, right? And that bias is probably an emotional attachment to whatever the conclusion is that you already have in your mind. Cognizance of that can help us mitigate the damage that it can do. And the best versions of ourselves are ones where we go, okay, well, I'm still going to evaluate the evidence. And I think that if we can do that and hope for that in our interlocutors, at least then we can move forward. But I disagree that it's pathos only. I'm going to keep appealing to logic because I feel like, I don't know, how do I describe it, man? Drew, I think that there are some really, really smart people, way smarter than me, who are just not convincing because they don't have that persona, that appeal. But I feel like if they can do the work, then less smart people like me, who maybe have a little bit more of a personality to convince, might be able to give that in a more palatable way. So maybe that's it. I don't know. But I do want to take a little bit of time. Did you want to talk about veganism a little bit? I'm in a mood.
A mood. Yeah, I guess we can go down that.
Okay, sure.
Excuse me for any clumsy language because I wasn't necessarily ready to talk about that, but that's fine.
You know what? That's kind of one of the brilliant things about doing a live call-in show. I never have any clue about what's coming up next.
Yeah.
So if you think that I am prepared, I promise you I am not. But let's see what we can do here. So what is it about veganism that's got you riled up?
Got me riled up.
Yeah. What's important that you want to talk to people about it?
I guess my kind of foundation would be just I might define veganism a little differently than your typical. They're often seen as very dogmatic and just avoiding animal products for the sake of avoiding animal products.
Sure.
To me, it's completely hinged on the idea of unnecessary suffering. And
okay.
To the extent that we can reduce unnecessary suffering to other sentient kind of beings, I think we should. And so, from my point of view, I think there are people in the world generally who are ethically permitted to consume meat and eggs and dairy.
Sure. The first people that come to mind for me are the folks that live way up north that like track, what is it, reindeer. And all they do is they subsist on reindeer meat because it's frozen, right? There's no plants or anything. They live on the reindeer and track them and kind of care for that. And there's kind of this relationship between the two. I would not view what they're doing as unethical or anything like that because I don't know. Ooh, I know where I want to go with this, Drew.
Sure.
Okay, so you have a suffering reindeer, baby, and you have a suffering human baby. Do you hold one as more important than the other?
A reindeer baby and a human baby, correct? I would probably still value, yes, the human baby potential it has as a moral agent.
Could you say that one more time? It kind of started breaking up, and I didn't hear everything you said. Could you say that again?
Yeah, I said I would still probably value the human baby over the reindeer baby, if nothing else, for the sake of like the potential the human being has as a moral agent in the future.
Okay, so do you think that humans are able to ascribe moral value to things in ways that other animals maybe don't?
Yes.
So to a degree, I agree with you, although I do think that there are plenty of animals that do have some kind of sense of morality. I think that for me, the damning truth of it is I hold a preference for human life over non-human life. And it doesn't mean that I don't value non-human life. I do. But when push comes to shove, I would pick human life more often than not. Not every time. I'm not going to be one of those absolutists. But
sure.
It is uncomfortable. But again, we're having one of those frank discussions where we're sitting down looking at the world the way it is and not the way that I wish it to be. And so I'm with you on that. And so when we're talking about unnecessary suffering, the reason I bring this up is, let's say you have humans who are suffering because they're starving and they could kill animals to eat them, right? And so it feels like there'd be a trade-off of either the human suffering or the animal suffering. You can't get rid of it altogether. What about those situations? How would you look at that morally?
In the situation of human beings starving and needing to kill an animal to survive?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would view that as permissible, yeah.
Okay. Then, Drew, I think we have more in common than not.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I like to think myself way less dogmatic than your typical vegan advocate. But those things like the hunters in like northern Canada or something, it's just not the kind of situation that you and I probably find ourselves in, and most people in the U.S. and like the kind of people like we're surrounded with. That's not the kind of position they are. So that's kind of why it's an important issue to me.
Yeah. Okay. Then maybe the examples that I'm giving are way too hyperbolic. Let's try something in the other direction. And then I know I have other callers who are on the line, but I'm enjoying this. So a friend that I've made at my new job recently went on a hunting trip. He's able to afford to live a meat-free lifestyle, and he's definitely able to afford to take care of his macronutrients in a way that would not require animal suffering. And yet he decided to go and hunt because it's a sport for him. And I thought about it and I was just like, holy crap, if I were to shoot a living thing and I really didn't need to, I think I'd get a boost of manliness. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, oh my God, I killed Bambi's mom. Please, somebody call an ambulance. No, stay with me. Yeah. It's going to be okay. You're going to live. I'd be a wreck.
Sure.
And so, but I look at this person and I go, do I view myself as morally superior? Because this is a wonderful human being. This is somebody who I've had really wonderful conversations with. And at that point, that's where the rubber meets the road. Am I against sport hunting? And I feel like going back to our original topic, right? Ethos, pathos, logos. The logic of it, right? My best self, I feel like would look at that and go, why are we doing that? And yet I'm still, my pathos, right? My emotions look at this and want to go, you know what? I kind of want to give that a pass because this is someone who in all other ways has shown to me that they are a great person. And it's so uncomfortable that I generally block it from my mind and try to go on and do other things with my life. Is that where I should be? No. But I think I need to keep challenging myself. And I think I need to continue on that journey. As a person who puts himself out on the internet as a content creator, I, for the longest time, thought to myself, well, I need to get my shit together. I need to have answers so that I can be confident about them when I deliver them. Because, I don't know, I wanted to be some kind of authority. And I'm realizing that maybe if I just be open and honest about where I'm uncomfortable, other people can hopefully embrace their uncomfortability too. But I know we kind of have gone far afield here. But this has been a lot of fun. I highly doubt you got anything from this conversation, but I've enjoyed it regardless.
No, that was really enjoyable. I have a ton more to say.
Oh yeah,
maybe I'll shoot you guys an email so I can hear from V as well. But no, it's been really enjoyable.
Well, so to be perfectly honest, I know that responding to emails, I've got a really big work week the next few weeks, and I am going to crawl into a blanket and cry myself to sleep because everything hurts right now after this. But I'd still love to have these conversations. So Drew, when you want to, please call in because I do want to talk to you about these things. And if there's anything that you want to kind of leave people with, I'd be happy to give you the last word before moving on to the next call.
Ooh, last word. Good one. No, I think I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
No.
Drew, thank you so much for calling in and kind of having fun with this with me. I wish that I could be an authority figure when it comes to, the morality of veganism and all of that. And I'm definitely not where I want to be, at the end. Like, I still have more of a journey, but I'm happy to have these conversations, and I hope that it's helpful for people to listen to them. Drew, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
Take care. Oh, okay. It is one of those days. If I am really, really rambling in the live chat, I'll try to keep an eye. Let me know. Yeah. All right. We've got plenty of other callers, and let me see. Like I said, I'm by myself, so I haven't gotten to read any of this. Ooh. Oh my gosh. Some of these are really, really good. All of them are really good. Okay, so we have an agnostic caller. No, a theist, sorry. Javier in South Carolina, it says apathy and its potential positive effects on how a person might live their life. And I'm super interested in that. Javier, you're live.
Yeah, hello. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing. You know what? Honestly, I've been better. I'm achy from that vaccine shot that I got, but I'm doing my best. I'm here and I'm happy to talk to you. So, you want to talk about apathy, and I'm super interested. Hit me. What do you got?
All right. So, I was thinking the other day about not caring, apathy. What a generic opening. But
it's okay.
It's the sort of thing I think where people don't want. It's the sort of thing that people don't want to mention about themselves because it comes off very negative. I don't want to presume what other people think, but that's what I'd imagine. Even though it can have some positive effects to an extent. For example, I'll just give an example from my own life. Like I've mentioned before, I got quite a few family members who are fundamentalist Christians, and with that comes a bit of homophobia, and by a bit I mean a lot. And when I was growing up and I was more firm in my Christian faith, I just couldn't. I couldn't go. It just didn't. It kind of didn't sit right with me. Like I wasn't homophobic like they were, but it wasn't out of a sense of. At least back then, it wasn't out of a sense of, oh, I care so deeply about the LGBT plus community, and I want them to, I want them to be able to get married. For me, it was a matter of, I don't care if people can get married or not. It's like if you want to get married, it's good for you. It's like, what do I care if you want to get married to someone of the same gender? What do I care what gender you're attracted to? I mean, do whatever you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give you a little bit of affirmation before we move any further. There was a time that I had that too. And I'm much more personally invested now, but to go back and look at the apathy that I had for other people, it's a little bit embarrassing. And I know that looking back and having some kind of, compassion for myself, being able to talk about that can be uncomfortable. So I'm really excited that you're, being forward and honest and wanting to kind of address it. That's awesome. So I interrupted you. You were saying that you weren't motivated by helping those people, but it was more of an apathy. Like, what do you care? Go on.
Yeah, and basically, to an extent, I'm still apathetic about a lot of things. Like that, because I'm pretty freedom-based, individualist-based. Like I want people to freely do, whatever it is they want, as long as they're not hurting other people. And I guess that's where the apathy ends. When you're harming other people.
Sure.
But even then, I think, not just for me, but for many others, that even that is maybe to an extent lip service, and the apathy extends a little beyond. To use an example. I think we can both agree that sweatshops are bad.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't expect you to start, trying to give me a speech about how sweatshops are so good and excellent. However,
yeah.
However, there is no doubt in my mind that each of us owns many things that are made in sweatshops overseas.
Honestly, the number of people who buy Shein stuff, and I am convinced that you cannot get clothes that are that cheap without some kind of awful treatment of the people who make it. And yet I also know that I'm in a privileged position to be able to afford clothes that aren't that. So I'm right there. Okay. Javier, I'm with you so far.
Exactly. It's very easy to say, oh, I care about, these people who are in the sweatshop, those factories where they have anti-suicide nets. But what are we doing about it? We're not doing anything. So do we really, really care? I mean, that's more of a negative thing. So I think when it comes to apathy, it's about, you got to balance that positive and that negative, but you can't deny the positive of, I guess, non-interventionism, like I said before.
To a degree. I think that there's definitely another side of it where apathy is incredibly dangerous. Well, no, you gave that example. What am I saying? I'm sorry, Javier. I'm listening. I promise. I don't know. I don't know, man. So what comes to mind for me is there have been times where I've had people being like, "Hey, Eric, we need you there with us for a LGBTQIA, cause, right?" And that cause, that, whatever it was, a protest or whatever, happened on the same day as an atheist protest or cause. And so I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, I only really have spoons for a number of things, right? I have, my cause du jour, right? The what I am investing my time in. And I've had, this one friend was just like, well, why aren't you at this other protest, and I have a lot of vegan friends who are just like, how come you're not spending that time? I think that we've got to have compassion for each other a bit, first off, that you've got those things that you are going to spend your time on and your effort. You're going to pick your cause du jour. That doesn't mean that you don't care about other things. It just means that you're limited in the efficacy that you have in the world. You can only do so much. And I think that if you have a different view than I do of where you're going to spend that time, that's good, because I can't make up for you, right? Like if everybody is able to do what they can, then we can address all of these disparate things. I don't know. I also, though, don't want to leave it at that, because yes, apathy toward, right, your example of gay marriage, right, that you weren't against it because you had apathy for it. I don't want to leave it there. I recognize that there's a pragmatic, positive view of it, and when it comes to religion, for a while I called myself an apatheist. I just didn't care about religion at all. But in that, I also was not standing up to systems that were really, really damaging in my society. Stuff like, I'm in Texas, right? The Texas Board of Education has taken a machete to history and science here in Texas. And so I really needed to fight against that apathy to get good work done. And I don't know, man. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, in terms of like the individual, like, how you feel about your own apathy, however much of an oxymoron that may be, I think it's about what lets you sleep at night,
Mm-hmm.
About just yourself. If you can live your life with however many apathy or however little apathy you have, and it doesn't cause you any trouble internally, then I think that's ultimately what it's going to have to be, But that's only on the individual level, of course. I value the individual level most highly, because at the end of the day, this is the only life you know for certain that you have, and I don't think you should allow other people to sort of force you to live it a way that you don't want to. But then when it comes to other people, and this is another place that I think the apathy plays in, I've noticed, and I'm not trying to lump a whole bunch of people together, but there are two, I guess, demographics in terms of the way they think, I've noticed that there are people who they care, but they kind of fall into the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I know what's better for you, and I will make it so regardless of what you want. And then there's people who, they just, I don't care, and they have a very hands-off approach. And the thing, I can't sleep at night with the idea of, I know what's better for you, and I will make it so even if you don't want it. That's whether it's someone like religiously saying like, oh, you're sinning, this is bad for you, or if it's someone else saying, oh, you don't know what's good for you, so I'm going to vote this law in because it's what's best for you.
Well, I disagree, because it sounds like you're creating this kind of dichotomy between apathy and fascism. And I think we have more options than that, right? I think I know what's better when it comes to separation of church and state. I am not a fascist about it, though, and I do want to support, kind of a democratic approach to it. That the group needs to, make those decisions together. And so, I do want to push back that it's not just, if you care, you're going to take other people's options away from them. I feel like that would be a really, really sad depiction of things that I don't think is true.
Oh, certainly. I don't believe that everyone that cares wants to force it on other people. I don't believe that at all.
Okay.
For example, I just got back from the gym, so if I sounded a little short of breath, I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good.
But all right, thanks. I believe that going to the gym and eating healthy is very important. For most of my life, I wasn't doing those things, and in the last couple of years, I got on that, and I'm in the best shape I've ever been. And I do believe it's important, eat right, exercise. I care in that respect, but I'm not going to go to everyone and try to, make them do it. If you don't want to work out,
yeah,
that's your problem.
Absolutely. Other people have things that they're going to hold up as more important, and you can disagree with them or not, but obviously they have a different view. I'm with you on a lot of it. I guess my question for you is the reason you called. Do you think that people negatively view apathy, and is that why you wanted to kind of have this discussion?
Yes, most certainly. I think, like I said in the beginning, I think that when someone, I guess, announces or espouses their apathy, it is purely has a negative connotation. And I can understand why to an extent. There's certainly bad things that comes from apathy, but I also know from my, just from my own experience, that being apathetic, and to be fair, I'm apathetic on a lot of things, but by being apathetic toward a lot, you can sort of, I find it to be a good way to live, because you are hands-off with a lot of things, and generally people don't like it when you're hands-on in their business.
I mean, so I'm going to be really, really, really stereotypical. So please, the thing that pops in my head is the Eli Wiesel quote, what was it exactly? It's essentially that, the only person who benefits from non-action are the aggressors, right?
From the non-action of others.
Say again?
Oh, they certainly benefit from the non-action of others, but
right.
They certainly are taking action. So I don't. I'm sorry. Continue.
No. I get what you're saying. So interesting. I think that if that was the case, right, like the way that you're viewing it is individualistic, right? So when I point out someone being an aggressor, you're like, well, that person's not apathetic. So it doesn't apply. We have to live in a world with other people, though. And when that's the case, there are aggressors, and apathy can mean that bad people get away with bad shit because we're not standing up for it. And we got to do, if this is a good example of, in the conversation that I had before you, we were talking, I was kind of referring to the best version of myself, or the world that I wish that I lived in versus the world that I actually do live in. If everybody was apathetic about each other's personal shit, I feel like we would live in a better world, but for the most part, we just don't live there. And because of that, we can't depend on it. Am I making any sense? I don't know, man. It's a weird morning.
I see your point, and yeah, it has been a weird morning. I still haven't finished assembling my TV stand from yesterday. Yeah. But I get what you mean. I'm not a pacifist. I think the only pacifism feeds aggressors.
Yeah.
So you gotta take action if you want the change. If you care, and whether or not you do care is really up to you. But I think that action is required in many cases. I also think, however, that's a judgment call each person has to make for themselves. Whether it ends up being good for them or not good for them.
Yeah, I agree, and I guess what helps me sleep at night is the causes that I do spend a lot of time on. I hope through these conversations to convince other people that they're causes that they should spend time on too. And that helps me feel like I'm making a difference. I can't do everything, and I can't fight on 100 different fronts because I'll burn out. I have burnt out before trying it. And because of that, I just need to hope that there are other people who are willing to spend their time on those other things. And that's really the best I can do. It's not the world I wish I lived in, but it's the one that I have. So, yeah, it is what it is.
I see. And I've often in the past felt the sort of frustration when people don't care.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been so pissed when I brought up the example earlier of the Texas State Board of Education wanting to remove talking about Anne Frank. No. I think so, right? Like wanting to remove a bunch of stuff about the Holocaust from kids' education, or like wanting to teach the controversy, quote unquote, when it came to evolution. And I got so upset when, that struck a chord. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm a big biology fan. It's my favorite of all topics. So yeah. I know that very well. Yeah.
And I got so upset when everybody wasn't just as pissed off as me. But there's only so much that I can do, and I can't force other people to put that time in. But the way I deal with it, Javier, is I have a show and we have these conversations, and I hope that people can be inspired to take action where they can. And that's the best I got. But I know I know we've been talking for a while, but this has been nice. I think if the reason you called was to hear some affirmation that apathy can be and has been beneficial in your past, I'll agree with you. It sounds like it has been beneficial. But the best version of myself doesn't want to stop there. I think that we've got more work to do. Yeah.
Yeah. All righty. Well, it's been nice talking to you.
Hey, it's good talking to you too. Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to be really interested in reading the comments because I know that there's so much more to the conversation, and it's going to be interesting to hear what other people have to say. Because I don't know. Am I being too lenient there? Should I be more hardline? Should all of us be more hardline when it comes to things like revising history or veganism or I don't know. But I'd be interested in reading what you have to say. Okay, let's move on and talk to... Corey in Canada says, is it ethical to use storytelling to communicate with theists? Corey, you're live.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you for calling in. Okay, so storytelling. What do you got? What's going on?
Say, for example, I tend to like probably a lot of fans of your show, I like facts. I like, peer-reviewed science. That's good for me. But I find a lot of theists are more compelled by long stories anecdotes. And I found that actually arguing in some of those in that style tends to be more effective.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if it's really ethical, or if it's better off to just say, here's how things are, as opposed to kind of dressing it up and making it more, I don't know, almost abstract.
Yeah. Do you think so? Before we dive in, I kind of want to know where you stand on it. Are you more in the former camp, where storytelling is something we should do, or are you more in the latter camp of here's the info?
I guess it kind of depends. I'll give you a quick anecdote, maybe so you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
I have a family member who is very vaccine hesitant,
mm-hmm.
and they kept saying,
"Well, nice way of putting that."
And they're yeah, and they're theists, and they were saying, I really want to. I'm not prepared to take the vaccine. Doesn't matter what you tell me about science. I'm waiting for God to give me a sign. And what I did is I told them that, just flippantly, I told them that joke about the either priest or rabbi or whoever in a flood. I don't know if you heard that one.
Oh my gosh, I remember that from church. That was one of my favorites. Okay. Can
right.
So I know that there are probably a whole bunch of people who are watching right now who have no idea what we're talking about. So I want you to finish your thought, but if we tell that story, would that get you off base?
Yeah, if you want to go for it, please.
Okay. So yeah. There are different versions of it, but you have a person who's very religious, and they find that, or they're told that a flood is coming. You need to evacuate from friends and family, and they're like, no, I'm going to wait for a sign, and then the flood starts coming, and the police come through, and they issue an evacuation order. Hey, everybody get out, flood's coming. They go, no, I'm going to wait for a sign. God's going to take care of me. The flood comes, and what was it? Was the first one a boat?
Mm-hmm.
Right, it filled up the downstairs, and so they went upstairs, and they opened the window, and there's someone on a boat nearby, and they're just like, hey, get in the boat, floods, it's getting worse, let's go. I'm like, no, God's going to take care of me. And so the boat goes on, and then the floodwaters rise, and they go up on the roof, and they're sitting on the roof, and a helicopter comes by, and they're just like, hey, grab onto this ladder, we can save you, let's go, the flood's going to kill you. And the person, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to wait for God to send me, God to save me. And then they die, and then they get to heaven, and they say, hey, God, why did you forsake me? I waited for you to save me. And God's like, what the hell are you talking about? I sent your friends. I sent the police. I sent a boat. I sent a helicopter. None of that. You didn't accept any of that. And God helps those who help themselves, right? Be ready to see the mundane as a sign. That's the way I remember it. Is that about it for you too?
Yep. I mean, you could always say it with more of a punchline and really dress it up with different, anecdotes and whatever. But that's what I told them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tagged on to the end of it, well, how do you know that God didn't send you these vaccines and the scientists, and this is the miracle that you've been waiting for? And that actually gave them, I just said it really flippantly, and that actually gave them pause and said, that's a good point. I don't know. But then I'm thinking, no, it should be the peer-reviewed science.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Corey, I'm so there. Okay. Number one, your ability to flip that back, take your history and remembering that story and being able to speak Christianese, in a lot of ways can be what gains you entry into being listened to. Being able to meet people where they are and, linguistically, or, that, I think that is an incredible skill. Not a lot of people have. And I think there are a lot of ex-Christians who listen to the way that I talk and tell stories. And the way that I do that is similar to what they grew up with. And they listen. And so I feel really deeply, personally connected to this. So I hear you, though. You're saying that we should just be able to give them the evidence and have them be convinced on the evidence. You still there? Corey? Uh-oh. Oh, you might have hit the mute button. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I was just going to say, I want people to believe in good things for good reasons, not good things for bad reasons.
Yeah.
And so I get it gets kind of muddled when we start throwing around. I know exactly what you mean, though, when you say meet them where they are. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you probably thought about this more than me, so I'm curious, is that something that you agree with, or is that something that you try and stay away from?
So it is definitely something that, given the platform, I have put a lot of time into. And I think that as people, storytelling is one of the most powerful ways to teach. And that's not just about religion. It's not just about ethics even. It's about everything. People listen and really absorb when it comes to storytelling. As a content creator, that's doubly important. And it's something that when I advise other content creators, especially people who are starting up, I tell them, hey, what are you selling? Why do people want it? And why should they listen to you? When it comes to creating a brand, right, you need to establish what is it that you have that people need, and then you sell them on that story, and you give them, where can they buy in and become a part? Like, I feel like it's deeply entrenched everywhere you look. And so, here's an example. Sesame Street. Did you watch Sesame Street growing up as a kid?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So one of the big things behind the beginning of Sesame Street is they were looking at commercials for sugary cereals and toys that they were selling kids, and they're like, what if we market the alphabet to kids? What if we sell kids on numbers? And basic concepts. And so that approach was really, really popular. So I think that we need to give storytelling a place. I think that is really important.
Do you have any tips on doing that in regards to something like science and good philosophical arguments? Because it seems, especially with science, it seems like that's a little bit tricky. I mean, you could do kids shows and whatnot, but when it comes to trying to put that into storytelling, that's where I kind of get a little bit of trouble with. Have you had much experience or any ideas with that?
I have. And I've actually used storytelling to help get people through that. So I'll give you an example. When people, I've used the story of phlogiston before. Phlogiston was an element people thought existed, and it early, I want to say 1700s scientists were just like, yeah, phlogiston, it's what is in everything that causes it to burn. It is the source of fire, and when you burn something, you dephloginate it. And so, like, if I were to give you ashes, coal, I'd say this is dephlogenated wood, right? And people put a lot of time into trying to isolate phlogiston. And they were convinced that phlogiston was a thing. And it took a long time for scientists to finally let go of the idea of phlogiston and explore another model. Another one is the humors, right? So what do you have? Black bile, yellow bile, blood, and I forget the last one. But people thought that, illness came from a bad balance of the humors, so you get people who are, they get the leeches, you have too much blood in your system. We need to draw blood, right?
Bloodletting, yeah.
Bloodletting,
I heard of that.
Yeah. And that came from this idea that, you have too much blood and your humors are off, and we need to kind of bring you back into sync. And so I've used that to talk about kind of this dogmatic approach to things and how we need to be able to let go of things to move forward. And that's been the case even in science. So that's an example that I gave. I've talked to flat earthers, and I've used the story of Oh, what is his name? I might need to appeal to the comments to help me there, but there was a astronomer who had a really famous conversation with Napoleon about the role of God in the movement of the stars, of planets. So where I'm going with this ultimately is you can still use storytelling. There are incredible stories that can help you explain scientific concepts to people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got to brush up on my storytelling skills. But those are good examples. I like that.
Thank you. When it comes to, storytelling versus storytelling, right? If you're a storyteller and you are using stories to convince people, and then you have a pastor who's trying to use stories to convince people, right? The boat and helicopter story we started this conversation with. I think what's important there is to model critical examination. So if you tell someone a story, I think the next thing you need to do is critically examine that story with them. Show them where that story is useful. And then be able to critically examine other stories and see if they're useful, right? Give them those tools. And in everyday life, I would suggest, right, so who was this, a friend or a family member that you did this with?
A family member.
A family member. Okay. Do you think you could agree with your family member would your family member agree with you that those mega churches are awful? Like send in your seed money, send me $200 and God's going to perform miracles in your life. Would your
Sometimes. It depends I think it depends on the church in their eyes.
Okay. I know that when I was a Christian, I was very quick to be like, oh, those people are evil. They're not really Christians. They're hucksters or whatever. Find places where you can agree with that family member on things and use that as places to implement those tools without them feeling personally attacked. Maybe if you have a family member that's a science denier or whatever the case is, then don't start the disagreement or don't start the conversation around science. Start the conversation around something that you have a shared, that you're on the same page with. It definitely helps, it helps them flex those muscles before feeling like they're being attacked or personally challenged.
Yeah, it makes sense. Maybe show them if they agree with some of those stories, show them are you being internally consistent with the way you're thinking and your logic about these different, whether it's religion or science or whatnot.
Right. Or, if you were internally consistent, could you apply it everywhere?
Mm-hmm. Or is it just a special case with this one topic you keep bringing up?
Mm-hmm. You got it.
I got to work on not being so forward with that, but you know what I mean? Just kind of trying to transition that and seeing if do you apply this to other aspects of your life, kind of thing.
I find the most benefit when I make it something that they don't feel personally attacked on.
Right. If
I can turn it into a conversation we're both on the same side of, I usually get better results. So my advice there is if you're not being an activist somewhere, I think that you need an outlet for the frustration you're having. And the sooner you can find an outlet for that, the easier it'll be to not feel like you have to jump in, guns blazing with those family members. That said, be patient with yourself. I got real pissed off at a family member on Thanksgiving. So obviously, it's not always going to be easy. But yeah, that's all I got, Corey.
No, thanks for the tips. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me. That was one of my favorite stories. Can I give you one last story before I go? Or before you go?
Please. Sure.
Okay. So another story that my pastor said was He said, in the beginning, God created Adam. And Adam was lonely. And he said, God, I would like a companion, someone to share this life with. And God said, okay, I will give you a companion that will cook for you, clean for you, who will care for you, who will be in every way and equal. And not only that, but they will serve you hand and foot, whenever you want. And Adam was like, that's awesome. What's that going to cost? And God said, an arm and a leg. And Adam went, that's kind of a lot. What can I get for a rib? And it was the most sexist, vile thing. But it was a story that got a lot of people at my church to laugh. And people walked away, and obviously that left an impression on me because I remember it, 25 years later. The power of storytelling can be used in positive and negative ways. So be vigilant and don't make storytelling something that the other side is the only one who gets to use.
Good point.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you. Take care, Corey.
You too.
Yeah, it was gross. I think back to it and I'm like, oh my gosh, my pastor was awful. Speaking of, by the way, I did call my pastor at one point, wanting to connect and create community across religious borders. And I do just want to say, Pastor Lance, you were awful, truly awful. I hope that you've gotten better as a person. But if not, screw you. All right, let's move on. I've got a few other callers. Is it hypocritical to reject religion because there's no proof for it, but to believe in life elsewhere without proof? Let's go there. Jim in Ohio, you're live with Eric.
Hi. Before we get to a subject, I pushed the notification button, but I don't know if it's important, but I pushed the notification button, but I wasn't notified. So I came in while you were talking to Drew, when you were saying that you felt you were talking over him or taking over. I didn't know if that was something you should know. I wasn't notified. If it's you or YouTube or...
It's YouTube.
Probably YouTube.
It's YouTube. Yeah. I've definitely heard that. It is exactly that. YouTube kind of decides who gets to see what and whether or not they get notified of new live shows. I've particularly heard that live shows are not getting a great... live shows have been tough when it comes to the algorithm nowadays. So totally understood. But talk to me. What you want to talk about hypocrisy?
I've had issues with YouTube demonetizing channels. Like they'll just pull names out of a hat. Okay, we'll demonetize them. But I've had a question that pops up every so often. Now, I believe generally that there is life elsewhere in the universe. Even if it's just simple microbes like that. But as you said when you introduced me, I have no evidence or proof to back it up. I think I can illustrate like showing a discussion or a debate between myself and a theist. It's only 4 lines, so it won't take long. But theist, do you believe there's life elsewhere in the universe? I would say yes. Theist, do you have any evidence or proof to support that? I would have to say no. And then the theist, then aren't you
a hypocrite?
Have the same outlook that you're holding against us? Holding a belief or faith in something that you admit you have no evidence or proof to support. And I don't know how to answer that. Is there a way I can reconcile the two, or am I being hypocritical?
No.
Believing or having faith in something because I want to.
Sure. So first off, when it comes to faith and talking to believers, make sure that you have the same definition of faith, because that can be tough. When I talk about faith, I specifically use faith. Faith for me means accepting something as true without evidence.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying about life in the universe.
Perfect. So let's talk about life in the universe. I think that the development of life, the way we talk about it, is a purely naturalistic thing. That it happens, abiogenesis. And it's not uncommon. And in labs, scientists have been able to simulate the building blocks of life happening naturally. And because of that, if someone were to talk about abiogenesis and whether or not life can form on other planets, I think it's entirely plausible. And I would be surprised, given the size of the universe, that it hadn't happened by now.
Yeah, Carl Sagan. Well, waste of space.
Right. And when you talk about religion and thoughts of, a God or miracles, I haven't seen anything to show that that's possible in any universe. I'll give you, so if I were in a lab able to show you the building blocks of life being created from just natural things, then there's a likeliness of it. But I have not been able to see anyone show that miracles happen, ever. And because of that, there is no likeliness. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I kind of get the gist of it. It's a little heavy for me because I'm kind of slow on these things. So I don't want to hold you up, but can you recommend any reading material or websites or things where I can kind of look into this better? Like what you say about being life or something in the laboratories?
Yeah. So I disagree with the person that I'm about to recommend on a lot of things, but it was a pretty instrumental for me in deconstructing it for myself. I read The Blind Watchmaker by Dawkins.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, that might be worth taking a look at.
Okay.
Yeah. Jim,
okay.
Thank you for calling, and thank you for being open and vulnerable about something that's uncomfortable. I really appreciate you.
Okay. Real quick, I hope you and V are feeling better.
Oh, I really appreciate that. It feels like we're taking turns, and I'm glad that we're able to do that for each other. And we'll get back in sync, but I think that a restful holiday is going to be really important, and we're going to take that time for ourselves. So thank you.
Oh, okay. You're welcome. And thanks again. Bye.
Take care. I know I'm not 100% on my game, but I'm trying. Thank you for being here with me, everybody. We've got Nick in Tennessee. Is there a purpose to religion, and how should we address it in the future? Nick, you're live.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hello. Okay. Hit me. What do you got?
Yeah, so I'm sure that you've heard of the idea of non-overlapping magisteria.
Yes, and if you want to see V's eye twitch, say that around them. It is the funniest thing. Okay, go ahead.
But just to kind of summarize for the audience, I guess it's the idea that there are certain ideas that science can examine, and there are other ideas that science can't.
Yeah.
Stuff like
miracles.
Why we. So I guess a supernatural action would be almost by definition something science couldn't examine. But I was under the impression like it meant often more stuff like, why are we here? How should we behave? What should our goal be in life or something like that? Like those are not things that science can answer. They're more of like philosophy or theology questions.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
It is. And I feel like I want to kind of draw a distinction here. So non-overlapping magisteria, right? You have two, they're saying there are two different realms. There's the realm of science, and then there's the realm of religion. And, if a miracle is a instance of a God breaking the rules of reality to make a miracle happen, then that wouldn't be testable scientifically. So they're saying that they're forever separated from each other. I feel like non-overlapping magisteria is really convenient because I think that if there were scientific proof of God, non-overlapping magisteria would go right out the window. If you were able to prove conclusively that a God existed, I don't think people would go, oh, no, that doesn't count because of non-overlapping magisteria. It's bullshit. Go ahead.
Fair. Perhaps that's not the right term. I shouldn't have used it.
No. It is important though. But you gave another example, and I'm having trouble getting my mind back there. Help me out.
So basically, the reason I brought it up is there are certain ideas that science alone cannot answer or help us address in a satisfactory way. Is that fair?
No. And I'll tell you why.
No.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So it's not non-overlapping magisteria, but there is a difference between epistemology, ontology, and axiology. Right? If you want a deeper breakdown, V on their channel a while back did a video on it, but I can kind of give a basic idea of it. Ontology is what exists. It has nothing to do with how you think about it or how you get to conclusions, but it just is. Epistemology is how you come to conclusions, and axiology is the ought, right? We ought to do this, or we should do that. The values that guide our epistemology. All three of those things are linked. But when you look at science deals with ontology, right? It is an approach, an epistemic approach to what exists. I don't think you can ever get to ought with science. To say that like science can't prove anything, when it comes to axiology, I feel like science is there for an entirely different reason. That I get that those things don't cross over. It is its own thing.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Like that's kind of in line with what I was saying, is that science isn't designed to answer certain questions about our existence that we nevertheless feel we need an answer to, kind of as a people, as a society. And so my idea is not like, how do we get science to do this, but just that science, for what it doesn't answer every question. And there are things that fall under axiology, epistemology, that aren't necessarily like scientific in nature. They're explorations of like the human
condition,
what it means to be human, the human condition. There you go.
Yeah.
And throughout history, we can see civilizations coming up with religions as a way of addressing those issues, whatever issues they can't find an answer to in their science and understanding of the world, they try and find answers to in religion. Right. And I think that
maybe that might be putting the cart before the horse, and I might be just like nitpicking that there. But I think that religion will package the axioms and the ontology and the epistemology, like they package them all together and make you think that they have to all come together in a package.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but yeah. As we're looking at it, kind of from the outside or moving forward, we can see like, hey, here's what science can figure out, and here's what science can't. The things that fall under like philosophy and whatever else. But people still feel an inclination, a drawing toward religious ideas, to exotic philosophies, and anything that addresses those unanswerable questions that science is just like, we don't know, and that's where the inquiry stops. Or ask somebody else, or poll the audience, or science at some points hits the bounds of what it can explore, and people are like, well, what's on the other side of that? And we saying we can't know definitively via science. So people are going to have thoughts about that regardless. How can we, so I guess ultimately my question is,
can I take a stab at it?
Well, oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I think that when you're talking about an axiom, people try to convince themselves that axioms are somehow bigger than themselves. Axioms begin and end with you. Axiology is not something I can tell you, as a true thing about, like, Nick, I don't know what your axiology is, and yours is different than mine, right? And because of that, if we treat it as ontology, right, something that everyone can view, just the exact same way, I feel is a fundamental misunderstanding of axiology. So here's an example. A lot of skeptical people, a lot of secular humanists take for granted this idea that we would value human life. And because of that, in conversations, we'll just assume that our interlocutor values human life. And it gets in our way. But I can't ontologically show you, I can't say, here's a document written by a God saying that you should value human life. We convince each other, right, and convince ourselves that we should value human life. But go ahead.
That convincing that we convince each other that we should value human life, even if we don't call that a religion, that is a moral, ethical code that we as a society would like to promote, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what other things should we promote in that way so that society ends up better, right? Like, and perhaps like calling it a religion is wrong, but nevertheless like a code of ethics and behavior and stuff. Like, people have these questions and like, what's the reason for this? Why should I do that? What's the ought, right? And we can say, like, here's how you should behave and the reasons for it. Not necessarily based in science, but based in our best understanding of the human condition.
Well, so right. I think you can blend them. So I don't think that it would be difficult to convince somebody that they should value human life, because most people value their own lives, right? It's not a huge stretch. One of the first things to address is this idea of where value comes from. I give you value, you give me value. Humans are the people who decide that, right? So we'll take that, we'll set that aside. Moving forward, I think that if we agree that human life is important, it's not hard to get to human well-being is important. If we get to human well-being, then we can start getting into science, because then we have a goal, right? If the goal is well-being, we can test what leads to well-being, and then that's where evidence can come into play. That evidence is contingent upon that person valuing human well-being, though. So they can go hand in hand, but that's after the axiology gets sorted out.
Right. Well, there's also a step in there where we decide how we define human well-being, right? Like, I can sit down with a transphobe, and we'll both agree that we will both think that we are, respectively, pushing for people's well-being. Me for inclusion and like their right to exist how they feel they should, and them to try and like protect some moral value they see in society that they think trans people are degrading, right? We each, in our own way, quote unquote value human flourishing or how to phrase that. But we have different sets of like morals that we're using to define and judge that.
So here's where I break with that. The person who is espousing prejudice is doing that because they are implying things there. There's a lot of unspoken stuff, right? A lot of homophobes, a lot of people who voted against gay marriage, for example, implied in what they were saying was this idea that there was some kind of perversion. When in my church it was, if we let gay marriage happen, then people are going to start marrying animals, right? Or pedophilia. Right. There was this implied, all this really vile implied stuff in homosexuality that people were carrying with them, which is absolute bullshit. And you see the same thing with transphobes. You see the same thing with racists, right? If somebody thinks that espousing miscegenation laws, right? You can't race mix. I think those people are carrying with them a lot of implicit negative shit. And I don't make room for that. If your view is human flourishing, great. But when you bring in all of the baggage of, those biases, or those I don't know. I those aren't the same for me. I think that I think the bigot is bringing in a lot of baggage with them, and trying to sneak that under the radar.
Right. So we're dealing with like the opposition from all this baggage, the community, the religion that they've got that's promoting these bad ideas in their minds. And while it's good and valuable for us to try and be opposing the the overreach of religion, right, when it gets into politics and starts influencing other people's lives. Mm-hmm. And to a certain extent, when we're trying to improve the lives of people that we are having conversations with, when we see that they have a religious belief that's like paradoxical or harmful or whatever, we try and like help them realize that so that they can move away from that bad version of religion. Would it be handy for there to be for lack of a better word, a good religion, a better idea to try and direct them toward, a la the way that the Satanic Temple operates, freedom of religion, like laws and stuff, the Church of Universal Suffrage that makes all like voting days holidays, so you can get those off if you need in your state because they're trying to like restrict stuff. The Church of Prismatic Light that makes like gay marriage like one of their foundational like virtues. These different things where like we can say, hey, we get that you feel the need to find religion. We get that you feel the need to find these answers somewhere because us saying we don't know is unsatisfactory. Get that. Why don't you pick a better one? Why don't you have a good one? Is there a merit to that idea of trying to make a better religion or religion-esque philosophy that we can try and promote?
Yes and no. Yes, in that I think pragmatically, a lot of people put axioms in the realm of religion, right? So if you have an ought, people think that is religious, and you need to create religious structure around it for that ought to be taken seriously. And for people who are convinced of that, then you have groups like the Satanic Temple and everything you listed, right? You have people who go, okay, oughts need a religion. I'm going to create a religion with the oughts that I think are important, and then people can go with that. Personally, I think that oughts are not in the realm of religion, and I see oughts all of the time in gaming communities, right? And in hobby communities. I think ought comes from community, not religion. And so I can draw my oughts from places that don't need to be a religion. I personally want to fight against the idea of axioms being in the realm of religion, because I think that we got to break that down. In the same way that religion does not have a stranglehold on community, religion also does not have a stranglehold on axiology. But I do want to make place in the world for people who think that that's the case and want to come up with good solutions otherwise. So yes and no. Not for me, but for people who think that that's the case, at least they have those options.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Nick, do you think that axiology is religious necessarily?
No, I don't think so. But I think that there are, So my point in raising all this is not here's how it necessarily should be, but would this be a step that might help us get some portion of the population moving in a better direction if we had a more concise, well-rounded, concept to promote, instead of do away with your religion, which, as we discussed earlier, rolls, the axiology, ontology, and epistemology all into one. And so when we try to show people the flaws in that, it kind of breaks a lot of their view apart. If we had something that was kind of cohesive and had axioms that were based on good standard, could we make a good religion essentially and say hey, your religion would be better if it was like this, and would that help?
So it sounds like you're treating groups like that like methadone. Where if religion is the methamphetamine, then the satanic temple would be the methadone that you use to help get off of that. I think that while I get the urge to come to that conclusion, I feel like that is being unfair to members of those groups. I've met plenty of Satanists who are happy Satanists. There's no goal that they're going to use that to eventually not be Satanists. So they need their own room. So I wouldn't treat it exactly that way, but I get where you're coming from. It feels a little infantilizing. And so I'd want to stay away from that. Nick, are you in the wind? I'm getting a lot of noise.
I stood up. It might be my headphones rubbing against my shirt. Sorry.
Got it. No worries. If you could try and pull that off of your shirt, that'd be good.
Yep, my bad.
No, it's okay. I think that I'm kind of happy to explore these. I've got to be perfectly honest. I'm starting to really flag. I know that I wasn't coming to the show today with my all, and I feel like I want to give this more attention when I've got a little more brain space for it. But I don't know, man. I think that for people who need to move to a different religion and can't just get off of religion, that's important to have. But I don't think it's necessary. And for groups like what you stated, Church of Prismatic Light and the Satanic Temple and all of those groups, they're beneficial, and they're also their own communities. I don't know. I feel like I've gone back on myself on this one. I think I need to think about it, and I think I need to give it more time, Nick.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but thank you for calling in, and hopefully I'll be a little bit better in the future, and we can have a more focused conversation then.
Yeah, sure thing.
All right. Take care, Nick.
Right. Take care. Have a good one.
You too. Okay, so I'm going to be perfectly honest with all of you. Today, I'm definitely not at 100%. I've throughout this entire episode, I've had chills. I'm sweating, and I'm I probably have a fever at the moment. I'm trying my absolute best, but it's been a rough day. So if I have absolutely gotten something wrong, call me out. I'm absolutely happy to own up to my mistakes and go from there. Thank you for being here with me, though, because, wow. Yeah, it's kind of rough. Before we go, though, I do want to thank everybody who's been supporting us, and I do want to read Super Chats. So let me do that really quick. If you like what we do and you want to support us, or you just want to get an ad-free version of the podcast or of the live show, you can go to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. I'm going to read the Super Chats. Off the Chain Atheist sent $1 in and says and had actually said in the chat earlier that it's been a long time. It missed me. It's good to see you, dude. Hope you're doing well. Sarah Dye has, sent in several, sent in $10 and says, I'm sorry you aren't feeling well. The vaccine and boosters always knock me on my butt. Yeah, I am definitely on my butt today. Sarah Dye sent another 10 and said, I asked V last week and loved their answers. Now to ask you, what are your favorite things about winter? Fuzzy pants, blanket forts, hot chocolate, a fire in the fireplace if you got it, board games, and I love the early nights because I love being able to bundle up and wear my favorite jackets and long sleeve shirts. And, name something about winter I don't like. It would be easier. I love the season. Sarah, went on and, donated another $5. Sarah, thank you for all of that. Thank you for the great conversations today. I've enjoyed listening while making treat for the birds that hang out here through the winter. Thank you, Sarah. I'm glad you've been able to hang out with us and we were able to keep you company. Tierson sent $10. Thank you, Tierson. And says, what are some things that an ideal religion would value, promote, or teach? I feel like if I were to create an ideal religion, it wouldn't be a religion. It would just be a community. But if I were to just, I really don't know. I feel like there are some secular humanist groups that do a really good job. I feel like there's definitely room for sarcasm and for snippiness, and for that, I really, really like what the Satanic Temple does. I think I'd need to explore that when I've got a little bit more brain space. Sakura Evenstar sent $5. Thank you, and says, Eric, please feel better. You did extremely well despite feeling off. Much snuggles to you and V. Thank you. All right. It has been a long episode. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope that I've been coherent to a degree. And if I haven't, thank you for being patient. And until next time, I'm glad we had this talk.